You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi everybody, and thanks for joining me again on Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Funnily enough, I may well be having a midlife crisis now. Well, maybe a late midlife crisis or even an early old age crisis, because I've got an announcement to make today. I'm going to come to that later because we've got another full show to share with you. I met Brittany Briley, or Mooney, in 2019, and as she'll tell you, it was at the ethereal Woods Hole Hostel. She was a very chirpy, very positive young woman who always seemed to have a smile on her face, even on the toughest days. She took a lot from the trail, though, as you're going to hear, the trail also took quite a bit from her. Mooney will be on in a moment. After Mooney, we're going to be having our ATC segment, and this time it is the head honcho herself, Sandy Mara. Sandy is talking about Jedi again, and she takes the opportunity to tell me off during the interview, so that is certainly something not to be missed. And after Sandy, as you can tell it's an all-woman day, Katie Westling, or Phoenix Rising, will be telling us about the gear she's chosen. In fact, it turned out to be very much along the lines of much of the gear that I had in my 2019 hike. She's done a lot of research to optimise her chances when she hits the trail the week after next. Finally, and sticking with the female theme, Larry Luxembourg talks about women and couples on the trail. As this was written in a, let's say, pre-PC era, he's called the chapter, The Thing with Two Heads. I'm going to leave you to work out what on earth that may mean. So now, let's go for it, and let's meet Brittany Briley, or Mooney. Now, let's meet a young woman I met as part of the class of 2019. This is Brittany Briley, or Mooney. Hey, Mooney, how are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Now, it's funny, I could only ever, if I were to bump into you and look at you and know you as Mooney, because when you told me that your name was Brittany the other day, for some reason it came as a surprise to me, and I've no idea why it did, because you look like Mooney.
Yes.
So, and being named Mooney, well, I think you need to share that, don't you? What's the reason you're called Mooney?
Oh, just hiking and didn't have a trail name and came across Mooney Gap in Georgia. Took a couple selfies there, moon in the sign. Got to a shelter later. I think I had hiked like 20-something miles, and it wasn't that far into the trail. And some people I asked, hey, what'd you guys all do at Mooney Gap? And everyone just kind of looked at each other like, nothing. What'd you do? I was like, you guys didn't moon it or anything? And they're like, no, but do you have a trail name? I was like, I like this one.
Yeah, nice. Did you live up to it for the railway on Mount Washington as well?
Oh, of course. All by myself there. You? I was, around a couple tourists or anything, but I definitely gave him the full Mooney. And then hiked and scurried away quite quickly.
Now, you can't scurry away quickly there, can you, though? It's pretty damn difficult, I seem to remember.
All rock scrambling.
Oh, yeah, that was a nightmare. I remember that going down from there. My gosh.
That was such a fun day.
Was it? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it? I found it very, very tough that day, I must admit.
I enjoyed it so much because after Washington, I went and did all the other peaks that were like a little off of the AT. I was like, I'm here. I have to go up all of these. And I set up on all the really? Cairns. Yeah. And I had ran into a friend that I hadn't seen in 1,000 miles early that morning before going up to Summit, Washington. So it was just this really cool, crazy, just like sign from the universe. I was like, oh my God, Frankentruck. I haven't seen you in 1,000 miles. And we run into each other.
Frankentruck.
Yeah.
That's a great name. That was a great name as well.
Yeah, we're still dear friends too. We're pen pals. We write each other letters.
That's real nice. That's real nice. Now, I know you're a nurse, and also when we spoke recently, you shot me with something else, which was your age. I'd always assumed you to be in your early 20s, maybe even a teenager, but you're an experienced nurse in your 30s. Where did the desire come from to get on a long trail in your early to mid-30s?
Oh, just the time is now. It was like I wanted to do it when I was around 19 and just didn't really have the confidence or support or financial means to make that happen for myself. And at the time, my mom was like, "What? That's a crazy idea. That sounds so wild." I mean, not that she would probably hold me from doing it, but as time evolved and I was, in my career, and I just thought, oh my God, that I've always wanted to do that. That sounds like something right up my alley, just getting out there and doing something just so badass, really.
Yeah, I mean, really, there's no question it is, though. But was that the bit that attracted you, or was it the hiking itself? Were you a hiker at the time? I
was a hiker. I've always done like outdoor stuff, and I had been working with mental health clients, taking them out, doing experiential therapies out in nature and hiking and backpacking, and just giving a lot of myself and receiving so much in return in that role. But I just was thinking, gosh, I would really love to take that time for myself and really jump into it. And at the time, my mom had passed away just about 2 years earlier. And so I just thought, this would be a great way to slow down and check into myself and just kind of feel a little bit more grounded after such a huge loss in my life.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, was that the catalyst that got you out there then, your mother passing? I mean, one thing I've noticed when people lose somebody, it makes them think about their own place in the universe as well, doesn't it? And it makes you think to yourself, am I making the best use of my time as well?
Yeah. I mean, through that loss and losing my mom, who was my best friend, and I had kind of gone back to my hometown and been her advocate and been with her through that experience, and also my life as a nurse, like so many times I'm with patients and I might be the last person that they're with before they pass away. And so sharing those moments, and people always say to me, hey, do what you love and do it now. Don't wait. And it's like, yeah, that makes total sense. And I see a life of my mom who was very joyous, and she had a very full life, but she was diagnosed with 2 different primary cancers just right after she retired. So it's like, waiting for that goodness. Oh, I'm going to have this other slice of freedom. I'm going to retire. I'm going to do all these things. But you just never know when it's your time, So it's like, don't wait.
You certainly shouldn't be waiting for it. You certainly shouldn't wait for it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Now, funny enough, I want to step back to what you just said. You said you take some, was it mental health patients into nature for experiential treatment, as it were. What, from your observation, is that beneficial to go into nature for people with mental health?
Oh my gosh, it might be the one catalyst in their recovery from what they're struggling with that really cracks open something. Whether it's hiking and not believing that they can do it, or just simply being out in nature and just knowing that there is so much greater in this world than just us and ourselves. Like, it's all a bigger picture and there's a greater force. So I think that brings a lot of people healing, just getting out, getting away from the buzzing, get away from technology, get away from all the societal pressures and weird things that people put out there, just taking time for themselves and understanding a little bit more of who they are and how they play a role in the greater universe.
Well, funny enough, I've just spent the last 12 hours going down a Facebook rabbit hole, so I feel you. Oh my gosh, don't get me started about that.
Yeah, it's like, how could I do something better? Who could I be? What could I do more of? All these people are doing these things. So it is an interesting contrast that plays into our lives.
I bet you found yourself talking figuratively or talking to your mother when you were out there, didn't you? Because of all the amount of time you have on trail. Did you find yourself relating to her or thinking about her? Because if she was your catalyst, you must have been thinking back to your relationship with her.
Oh my gosh. I thought of her every single day. I would get so tickled thinking there would be some times where I couldn't believe that I hadn't been talking to her on the phone and telling her about some of the adventures and funny things and wild things that had happened. And there were so many times I would just be, sitting there or scared or feeling, like maybe this is too much, or do I really have this? And then I'm like, oh, I totally got this, and would feel like my mom was right there. And there was an instance in Maine, and I was hiking, and early morning, just do, and all of a sudden I look down and I see these large hooves, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like face to face with this giant moose. And we just kind of step back and look at each other, and we walk to the side, and she just walks off. I mean, we were like within 6 feet of each other.
Oh my God.
The sun was in my eyes, and I'm like, whoa. And we both looked at each other and kind of stepped away, and she walked gracefully and just went into one of the like ponds and just kind of looked at me. And I thought to myself, oh, that was definitely in some way my mother just glaring at me straight in the eyes, gracefully doing her thing out there in space and time, gallivanting.
Do you think she would have been supportive of your choice to go on that trip?
100%. She would have been cheering me on. She probably would have drove out at some point and met me somewhere and delivered beer and snacks and munchies.
Marvelous. So did you have anybody at home who was supporting you logistically? Any other family or friends who were sending you stuff, or did you work out your own sort of resupply as you went along?
No, I definitely had support. I have a lifetime partner that I had been with for a really like 10 years. And so he was sending me things. I had some stuff prepped, and then I had my mom's best friend actually came out and met me in North Carolina off the Blue Ridge Parkway and delivered beer and food and good times. And then she later came out to New Hampshire, and we hiked a little section in the White Mountains to honor my mom, which was really amazing. And it was her first time ever backpacking and spending the night out in the woods.
Oh, really? So you treated her to New Hampshire as the first time.
I treated her to the White Mountains, to the hardest section of the trail.
Yes. And you're actually quite specific when we spoke before about what it was like to be in your head, particularly in those early miles. Do you remember what you said that you'd got out of it?
Gosh, just being in my head for that long. I mean, it's basically like a all day meditation, just walking through nature. Yes. But I just felt so held, just held by nature, and just kind of like, I can just finally breathe and feel just so much freedom.
Well, you actually said you were creating resilience.
Yeah.
And you're empowered. I love the idea of creating resilience. How do you feel that? How do you feel that happened to you? What was it about the trip? Was it giving you that? Was it giving you an independence you didn't have before? Or was it giving you a belief in your own abilities that you didn't think you had before?
I think, oh man, on so many ripples of that statement, the resilience that I have learned from the Appalachian Trail and in that process it was so profound. It's like just building confidence and strength and knowing that I have myself. Like, I have got my own back. I know that I can do this. And even if things feel difficult or scary or fearful or beautiful and brilliant, it's like all the feelings created in the journey there. And that resilience, just teaching you every day you can get up and you can do this thing that we're so lucky. Like the fact that we even get to do this and wake up every day in nature and fall asleep at, sunset and wake up before sunrise, or however our body feels. It's like it creates such a foundation for the rest of my life.
It's such a privilege to have the chance to do. You're absolutely right. And I know that you have gone back to working as a nurse. Did the trail ever make you reconsider your career? Was there something about the life you were leading that you didn't want to go back to, or were you quite happy to get straight back into the life that you were leading before?
I was, I think it really broke my heart in a way that it broke it open more. So I felt more compassionate about what I was doing, and the fact that I could have all that time to myself and to becoming a better person and just creating that resilience that, makes me feel more empowered as a human navigating the world. I don't think it made me change that I wanted to go into a different direction. It just opened me up to more to see that it is possible to do things like that, and we're allowed to do whatever we want.
Yes. Yeah. But people, I've had so many people say, I could never go and do that. I can't. I said, why not? You're not bloody working anymore. You're retired. It's perfect for people who are retired. But they just say, I could never do that. But of course you can.
Anybody could do it. Anybody can do it.
You don't know you can do it.
Yep. You just have to really want it. It's
Absolutely.
like anybody could do it. But if you just have to genuinely really want it. You want the experience, not getting to Katahdin, it's like, not like, oh, I did it. I did that, 2,192 miles. It's like, you have to want the whole experience.
Sure. And funny enough, you saying that in the presidentials, you actually carried on going up some of the mountains. The trail took you round, which, by the way, makes you certifiably crazy, because I remember how exhausting it was just going on the trail. But you actually went up those mountains as well. That's something who's really enjoying the experience.
And I have to say, I just, nobody's up there. I sat on the cairns, just butt naked, just looking at the world, thinking, "Isn't this just great?" I'm pulling a full Mooney.
You were trying to really be a Mooney. Excellent. So you started early March, I believe. How did you prepare for it? Was the physicality a shock to you when you first started, or was it something you prepared for already?
Well, I was already kind of pretty active person, leading a lifestyle that I own a tiny little business in Tucson that's a circus company. So I was always active doing circus and moving around. And
what did you do? What did you, apart from mooning all the time, what did you actually do?
Yeah, I did just like organizing the community, and I have a dance studio with my two best friends, two other women that have been a great support to me in my life. And we started this business over 10 years ago doing circus arts like fire and stilts and juggling and acrobatic stuff. And yeah, just putting on productions and inspiring the community through dance and movement. So I was like pretty active, but there's nothing that really could prep you for hiking every single day for 5.5 months.
Absolutely right. All the plans go out the window, don't they? All the things
Everything's out the window.
all that free time you think you're going to have on the trail, you don't have any free time at all, do you?
Yeah, and I didn't really tell people I was leaving because I was thinking, God, what if I get out there and I'm like, I hike 100 miles and I think I can't do this or something. So it wasn't until 400 miles.
Not everybody enjoys it, do they? So, and I understand why some people don't. But so you didn't actually tell your friends? I thought you actually went with somebody.
I did tell some people, but I didn't really elaborate or tell that many people. And I did start off with an acquaintance that I had worked with, who also had kind of the same inspiration that she had always wanted to do it. And so we thought, we'll start together. And I knew I was a solo person, but it was a great ploy to make everyone that I did tell feel comfortable that I was going out to do this thing. And she left at, what is it, Neil's Gap? Is that the first stop?
Neil Gap.
Neil
Mountain
Gap.
Crossings, yeah.
Yeah, we got there and she's like, I'm ready to go. I don't want to do this. I don't think this is for me. And I was like, I'm hiking to Maine.
So obviously the hike suited you. Was it something that you quickly adapted to, or did you find it a bit of a slog?
Oh, I quickly adapted to it. I love just being in spaces that can just build yourself, like being uncomfortable. There's discomfort. There's the physicality of it. There's the inconvenience of it, and finding and navigating.
It's what I call the more feral side of backpacking, because you're a nurse, so you got sterility all around you. But going in the woods and living almost like a feral animal, but did that come easily as well?
Oh, I loved it. It felt like it was like my true self.
No, not sharing and mooning a lot. Excellent.
I was like, this is the every day you can ask some of the people towards the end. The joke was, this is the best day ever. We would just laugh about like every day. It's the best day ever. I don't know what I'm going to get into. I don't know what's ahead, but I can guarantee that I'm having the best day ever.
That's cool. And we're not going to dwell on this, but I can't pass by your hike without referring to somebody we both met, a guy called Pony Keg. Tell us about Pony Keg for a couple of moments.
Yeah. Pony Keg and I met on the trail around Franklin, North Carolina, and we were just instant friends, kind of passing each other back and forth. I just thought he was ridiculous wearing his onesie and hiking with this dog that didn't look like it belonged on trail. And I was like, this guy's a character, We ended up hiking.
Dog, wasn't he?
Yeah.
The dog was as well, wasn't he? Yeah.
But yeah, I got to know him. We hiked on and off together up until Pennsylvania, and he was doing a yo-yo. So he had already hiked from Maine to Georgia, and then he was hiking back up. But honestly, what a guy. I mean, meeting him and learning about him and understanding his struggles, and we became good friends and hung out after the trail. And I am still learning so much from that experience. Even though he passed away this past June. What a dear soul. It always is a good reminder to just love on people, be loving to people, because everyone knew him because that was what he put out there. It was just so difficult for him to take that in and harness that in. He had lived a completely different life than me. And in that difference, I think it bonded us as just people that were just trying to be in the moment and love nature and just be our best selves. And I know that his experience on the Appalachian Trail in his time was the best part of his life.
Well, you know what? That's a lovely thing to say, because what I remember about him, the day I particularly remember was McAfee Knob, when we saw you guys there, and when he saw us, he just flung his arms around us like we were the greatest people. He'd missed us forever. He really made you feel that you're the most important person in his life at that moment, and I love that part about him. And as you say, the blue onesie was quite something, wasn't it?
It was definitely something.
Yeah, so he got off the trail, and I think that, was it because the dog wasn't well or something, or the dog was suffering a bit?
Yeah, and he had given himself a time limit that he would commit 1 year, and it was up, and he wanted to go do his things, and he had set goals for himself, and he wanted to follow through with them, and that was important to him. So, yeah, he got off of the trail, and I continued another 1,200 miles, and we were friends and hanging out the year after, I got off trail, and we did some really crazy cool things together. We ran an ultra marathon in Arizona on the Arizona Trail, doing 34 miles. He floored past me at mile 19. He's like, "See you later." And he just took off, and he wore another onesie during the race. And then we ended up hiking the Arizona Trail together, getting off just 100 miles short of finishing, which I did finish by myself, carrying his ashes, and spread them in the Colorado River at the bottom of the Grand Canyon as a tribute to Pony Keg.
Oh, gosh. Well, lovely guy, and what a shame, really. But, let's go back to your hike then. So he left you, he had to go back with the dog. How did that affect your hike? Because, and the reason I ask is that the two of you would normally go beyond shelters and often find fantastic views to camp by. We often saw you on the top of mountains overlooking these great views. Did you continue doing that hiking just away from the shelters, or did you then more incorporate yourself with other hikers again in the evening?
No, I stayed off trail. It was like pure bliss to me. I felt like I had gotten I always joked with Pony Keg that I was cheating about getting to know little like hacks and like extra advantages to knowing like the real secrets of the trail, just because he really pushed me to get off of the beaten path, go camp, don't hang out by the shelters. This is like the real good. I mean, have the social part. And so when he got off trail, I stuck to that and I felt confident about it. And I loved just like jotting off of the trail and just finding my camp spot or going to these just beautiful places and setting up my tent and just being not at the shelter. So it was pretty rare that I would actually camp at the shelters.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw you at shelter, funny enough. And I know that you eventually teamed up with a few of my previous guests, actually, and friends who've been on the show. There was Cushy Life, Turd Ferguson, and Sharktooth. And I believe that you're also with Runaway Jim towards the end. Did you team up because you were heading into the tougher miles, or were you just ready to have a tramley at that stage?
It wasn't even either one of those. It was just, we just kept seeing each other. It was like, we were all just these magnets that just kept, everyone knew I was like more of a solo hiker, didn't really hike in groups, but we just all kept meeting up and seeing each other. And I did do some shelter stays with them, and they were so fun. And I am so forever grateful for that time. There was a couple weeks there that we were all just kind of, in a pod, and we ended up summiting Katahdin together. And I'm still friends with all of them. And it was just so fun. I couldn't resist the fun. It was like, just say yes to all the great things.
Especially with Turd. Turd's hilarious, isn't he?
Oh my God. And we're still friends. We probably talk like every week and just shenanigans. And Cushy and I, are still friends at Sharktooth, and Runaway Jim is one of my dear, dear friends. We'll probably.
Stayed in touch with Jim, have you? You stayed in touch with Jim?
I stayed in touch with Jim, and he is a show up friend. He drove down and met me at Pony Keg's funeral, and I see him in the back of the funeral. Nice. and he's there, and we hung out and had a great time, and we do stay in touch and are still good friends.
That's nice. So, but what struck me when we spoke last time, you traveled across Maine with those four, but you wanted to actually finish alone at the top of Katahdin. Why was that?
Yeah, I was just feeling so just amped the morning of Katahdin and just
ready to go.
I was just so ready to go, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to have this moment of soaring. When you're doing Katahdin, you feel like you're soaring above the clouds, because you kind of are. And that day I was above the clouds, and I just wanted to just have that moment and not be distracted and just soak it in, because I knew it was the end. And just soak in that time and just really nurture myself and that experience, and like a reflection, really.
So did you get, like, a lot of people get conflicting feelings as they touch the sign or just head towards the sign? Were you glad that it was over, or were you sad that it was over? Were you relieved that you were done and that you'd made it?
I think you could say I was a little sad. I mean, I was very excited. I knew that I was going to do it all. I felt it. It felt very natural for me. But I was sad that it was over, because I loved being out there. I honestly, I have to say, I thought about turning around and hiking back.
Did you? Oh my God! No,
I didn't, but
that would have been a test. That would have been a testimony to Pony Keg, wouldn't it? To go back and do a yo-yo like it. Oh my gosh!
But I knew that. But I was excited because it was something that had just cracked open my heart, and it was the beginning of something else in my life. Just excited to share all the love that I had built up in myself with the rest of the world, and take it off trail and just continue living my awesome life.
Did it still feel awesome? And by that, I mean, did you think back to Katahdin or to the AT generally, pretty much most days, like most people do?
Absolutely. And it wasn't like a sad, oh, I wish I was there. It was like, my heart's so full. I'm so grateful I had that experience, and knowing how I felt, and the freedom and the love. I always
smile every time I think. Yeah. Every time I think of it, I smile all the time. And I think it's just great that we've got that sort of tucked away in our mind, that's in my case 6 months. 6 months of my life, I did something that most people dream of doing and never even try to do it. So what was your post-trail life like then? Did you go back to work straight away? Did you start traveling, or what were you going to be doing?
Yeah, I actually dove right back into work like 8 days after I got back from the AT. I started back at work and working at the job I had actually left before hiking the AT. They were so gracious to invite me back and just put me right in with the same same clients. And I did find ways to still, stay on trail and it was a good feeling, it felt like I had gotten a reset, and I felt more alive.
I was going to ask you about that. And I've been pondering this since we did speak before, and I don't want anybody to think that this is getting too deep. Do you think that the AT altered you, or did it reveal you? Because they are two separate things. I wondered if you've thought about that at all, because did your approach to life change, because of the experience and you felt altered, or did something come out that was always there, do you think?
I think something came out that was always there. It was a reveal.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were aware of it. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you did the Arizona Trail, you said, with Pony Keg. What was that trail like? Because I've never done that one at all. Did you enjoy it?
Oh my gosh, it was so awesome. It was very remote. You don't see that many people. There's not that many people doing it. And you get the best of Arizona. And I've lived there for 11 years. And to hike through that entire state, it was very different than the AT. And in the difference, it was just as equally awesome and beautiful and challenging. And I was so glad to have the foundation of the AT to do another through hike.
I'm sure you were. Yeah, I think that gives you a confidence you wouldn't otherwise have had, and so that's obviously a good thing. Are you going to do any other long distance trails, do you think?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Right. Have you got any planned, or did this more happen sometime in the future?
Oh, I'm sure I have something planned. It's like through hiker who loves through hiking never stops thinking about through hiking.
Right.
Yeah.
So your next one's not lined up yet. You've got it in mind, have you?
Oh, I think the Continental Divide Trail is probably next.
All right, nice. Well, if you do that, come back on and tell us about it. I'd love to. I've had virtually nobody talk to me about the Continental Divide Trail apart from Dixie, so it'd be great someone else talks to me about it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to end something I've been starting. I've done recently, and at the time of recording this, time people hear this, there should have been previous 2 weeks with this thing, which is basically I'm going to ask you 11 questions, which is straightforward, quick answers. Okay, choices. Okay. So the choice is tent, hammock, or shelter. I know it's not shelter, by the way. Tent, hammock, or shelter.
Tent.
Maine or New Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
Oh, right. Your favorite day on the trail?
Oh my gosh.
Well, they're all great, apparently.
They're all great.
Is there something that really stands out in your mind? I think this was an amazing day.
The ponies. The pony day.
Oh, really? In Grayson?
I don't know why. It just was so funny and just, I don't know. It was just a unique day. The whole day.
Now, you may not have one of these, which is least favorite day.
Gosh, I think, trying to think of least favorite day.
Something that sucked from beginning to end.
I think it was a muddy day in Vermont if I had to pick one day, and I didn't have camp shoes halfway through. I was like, I'm over this camp shoe thing, and I got my shoes sucked off by the mud, and I had to dig in the mud to find my shoe.
Yeah, that's got to qualify as least favorite day. Yeah, the best view, and that may not be this. It may not be the view for everybody because, as people know, that you always take your views when you can because sometimes the weather's so bad that you can't see the great views, can you? So what great views did you have?
Oh, I have to say one of my favorite views, which sounds funny, was a fire tower in Vermont. I don't know why, but just looking out and seeing so much of the forest and the way that it was, the sunset was, it was like, I had always wondered, what does Vermont look like? I'd never been there. And something about being in the fire tower all alone and the wind is blowing and you're just looking out at all these trees. And I don't know, it wasn't anything like, super significant in terms of the view, but I think it was my favorite kind of lookout.
Nice. Very nice. And the best hostel, I'm not even sure, do you stay in hostels much or not?
I did. I think, it's a tie between Standing Bear at the end of the Smokies because everyone was there and just had a great time. And
that's a great
between
place.
Woods Hole Hostel where I met you.
That's right. Yeah,
I liked that place.
Well.
Yeah.
It's a good place. Great vibe to it. your favourite meal you had on the trail, the best meal you had, or the one that was your favourite.
Oh, okay. My favorite meal was early in the morning, and I was hiking to up Moosilauke, and I came across a trail angel, and he had leftovers, but he decided to just whip up a whole new fresh batch of fresh chicken wings with his homemade sauce.
Oh, man.
With a bunch of IPAs.
I never had anything like that.
That was my
IPAs
favorite.
as well. How bad is that? Yeah, really?
A couple.
No shit.
It was a couple IPAs for breakfast.
And what about a meal that you never want to eat again?
I never want to eat again. Oh, I just don't ever want to even think about the possibility that I even slightly ate Spam. I can't even believe I'm admitting it on air. Please don't judge me. There was one moment where Spam just tasted really amazing, and I know that is just the grossest thing ever coming from a vegetarian.
It's fine. Even more impressive. Last three. Shoes or boots?
Shoes, trail runners, ultras, all the way.
Okay. Everybody seems to have those, yeah. And did you filter all your water all the time, or were there times you just let yourself off?
I rarely ever filtered my water.
Oh, really?
Yep. Wow. I rarely filtered my water. And in fact, there were some times I didn't even have a filter. And I just picked from the sources. So many people told me I was going to get so sick. And I just looked at them and I thought, I am drinking some of the freshest water. And if you can pick it from a good source and know what you're drinking, you don't have to filter it. I did not. I rarely filtered. I filtered around New York and some places that, maybe had a little bit more city close by. But overall, I rarely filtered and I never got sick.
Interesting. Did you ever deliberately sleep with your food bag as opposed to hanging or storing it? All the time,
yeah.
those other things.
I slept with my food bag a decent amount because you just can't, there's no getting away from those late night munchies, Just got to get a little snack in when you wake up. You're just so hungry.
Yeah, bears feel that way as well, by the way.
Oh, yeah. They're like, oh, she's got food in there for sure.
Well, look, it's been a complete delight catching up with you, Mooney, and it was great fun when we were on the trail. It was lovely to have met you, and I wish you well. I hope you're staying safe with the COVID going on. I know you're a nurse, and I don't know who you actually see, but stay safe. And if you do the CDT, come back and tell us about that, okay?
You got it. Thank you so much, Mighty Blue.
Speak to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
I must say, after her name and her age, the circus thing was another surprise to me. You reveal what you want to reveal on the trail and you become whomever you wish to be. That's one of the truly magical things about a long-distance hike. You can be exactly who you are or who you choose to be. Now, before we get on to Sandy Mara, I really need to share something with you all. Let me start out by saying that doing this podcast for the past 4.5 years has been a constant joy. I've been lucky enough to have met, either online or in person, some truly remarkable characters, and judging by many of your emails, they've inspired some or even all of you at one time or another. But I've got a few other ambitions that I want to turn to. I'm 68 now, and I find that hard to believe myself. And I reckon I've probably got another 10 reasonably coherent years within me, and I want to see what I can achieve with those years. So I've come to a decision. I'm not going to quit or stop the show, but from April until October this year, I'm going to be stepping back quite a bit from hiking radio and network shows. What that means for the Mighty Blue Show is that I'm adding a new host to the show for most of that time, but I'll be doing one podcast each month in my normal format. I'll also continue to follow Katie as she heads north, and I'm going to be incorporating those conversations into each show. As of the first week of April, Ryan Hopkins will be taking over the Mighty Blue Show and travelling to the AT and interviewing hikers as they come through. He's got pretty much free rein to develop other sections if he wants to. As I say, I'll still do the one a month plus following Katie each week. The Jester and Trail Name shows will both continue, but I'm making sure that I pack out the upcoming schedule on those shows, and a lot of them will be direct from the trail. I'm not going to steal Jester's thunder, but I'm sure she's going to be announcing her exciting plans soon. Then, in October, it will revert to what it's been like for these more than 250 shows. I hope that you all understand the need to do other things and that you'll continue to support all our shows. I'm still going to be producing every single one, but instead of spending 20 to 30 hours a week on podcasts, I'll do everything on a Wednesday, which will be known as Podcast Day. Wish me luck and let me enjoy my break. I hope that you think I've earned it. And just in case you're wondering what I'll be doing, I want to write more books. As you know, the story of my 2014 hike has been told, but I've revised and will soon be rebranding those books with new covers and everything like that, along with the free one that I give away. I kind of want to write about my Camino journey and my second AT through hike, because I've got the covers for those as well. But this summer is going to be all about writing a novel or a series of novels, as well as honing my craft and completing my website. I am really looking forward to it. So now, let's hear from Sandy Morra, the President and CEO of ATC, as she takes up last week's theme of Jedi. Here's Sandy. Okay, today we have on Sandy Morra, who's the President and CEO or Chairman and CEO of Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Hi Sandy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And your subject, should you choose to accept it, as they say to Tom Cruise, is build an inclusive outdoors. Why Jedi on the trail matters. And so to start off with, what actually does an inclusive outdoors mean as far as you're concerned?
I think what it means is that any outdoor space, or any space, period, quite frankly, is open and welcoming and safe for anyone who chooses to engage in it. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? It's like asking, well, what makes it inclusive for me? I mean, so it's not like we're trying to do something that's different or at odds with what every human being expects, which is that the opportunity to participate in things that they are interested in, to learn skills about, and that when they step into whatever that space or experience is, that they are truly welcomed for who they are, that they have an opportunity to not just learn and participate, but also add their life experience to it, to the people that they're with. That they have, if they're so interested, have the opportunity to think about ways in which it's being managed or what the future for the activity or the organization looks like, and that they have equal say, again, just based on their ability and what they have to bring. And that is, there's nothing about who they are or how they look that precludes them from that opportunity to participate.
Right.
And also that they feel welcome there.
And I don't know whether you heard me speaking with Julie last week. I thought this is formalising something you'd think we automatically know. We get taught this by our parents as a child, to be kind to other people and don't try to get in their way and make sure that everybody has a fair shake of things. So I noticed when I looked at the ATC website that you refer to concern by all of the 31 trail maintaining clubs that they're struggling to bring in new members. And is Jedi part of the response to address this? Is by formalising this approach going to help address bringing more people in to help as trail maintainers and volunteers for the trails, do you think?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think any organization in this day and age that feels that they can be successful by restricting access to significant portions of the population, whatever that portion is, I think it's probably pretty short-sighted. Sure. I think when you look at an organization like ours, just our general demographics, that absolutely is trending more and more age-wise, that there are, and certainly within our clubs, that you have to stop and wonder, how long is this sustainable for the kind of things and work that we have to do moving forward? But I also think, particularly with the AT and other public lands, we are just that. We are public land. So our obligation to ensuring truly unfettered and equal access, whether it be to recreate on it or to volunteer for it, the obligation goes beyond, say, you have a private club and you make a decision to do this.
Sure.
We're managing a public resource.
Yeah.
And therefore, there is an obligation on everyone that currently provides leadership for what we do and participates in it to recognize that, this is absolutely necessary for the Appalachian Trails, for its long-term survival. I mean, as you know, and I've mentioned to you before, ATC is working. We're not looking at what we're doing in the next 2 to 3 years. We're looking, what does the next 100 years for this trail and the
Sure.
organization look like? And with the shifting of demographics in this country, with the increase in needs, with the, the dire kinds of challenges that we're facing through climate change and how that's impacting the trail, the need for more volunteers and for a broader base of the American public, whether they're supporting us by voting for people who support funding for our national public lands period, or they want to actually personally volunteer, that whole spectrum. The more people that we have inside and on the trail with us,
Sure.
the better the trail will be.
But formalizing Jedi, great name, by the way. I don't know who thought of that one, but formalizing it as I said to you last week, I'm sure it's something to do with, you wanted to call it Jedi just for the sake of it being Jedi.
Well, it's justice, equity, diversity,
Yes,
and inclusion, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, you could arrange those letters in different ways.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's such a great name. But implicit within the need to formalize it, should one presume this wasn't a welcoming place before, or are you just making sure that people know that this is meant to be a welcoming place?
Well, I'm not sure it's a presumption. I think we have some pretty good, both through individual stories and just overall data that the National Park Service consistently is publishing about the lack of minority representation on all of our public lands.
Sure.
So it's not like we're presuming that there's an issue. We know that there's an issue. We can look at you look at our website and look at our staff and our board. There's an issue. We are not a diverse group of people right now. So I don't think there's any presumption here. There's just the fact that that's where we are right now. And I'm not sure, you keep saying formalizing Jedi. It's not a formalization. I mean, this has become a key tenet to the basic value of this organization. So this is part of our value system. It's not a program. It's not a project. It's not something that we have a beginning and an end date to. This is becoming part of the DNA of who we are. So I want to be really clear about that too.
There's a good piece. I'm going to link to it about Jedi on the ATC website as well, and it appears to be one of the pillars of this. This ideal appears to be acknowledgement of the barriers to access to it.
Right.
Firstly, accept it. That was an interesting thing for me that you wrote about, that was mentioned. Is that an important part of the theme, that we have to acknowledge this has happened in the past and we're now going to be doing something different going forward?
I think that's important anytime anyone looks to kind of move themselves up the spectrum, right? That circular spectrum of life, is that we all have to understand where we've come from. I think, in my opening to the most recent issue, which was a formal acknowledgement issue for ATC, is I talked about the fact that, we're as much a product of our mistakes and missteps as we are of the things that we've done well. And I think through both a historical perspective and just in listening to the stories of people currently on the trail who are still experiencing a sense of not being welcome because of who they are, that it's clear that we have to start doing things differently. We have got to create a different space. And we need to either, we can bring everyone along with us, or we can simply make sure that everything we do, ATC does, is setting the stage to ensure that we do what's welcoming to people, that we support and celebrate the businesses and the communities and the partners that also have this as part of their value system. And that's where our emphasis is. And by doing that, we're going to create that environment, regardless or not, we don't need to convert the choir here. They can come with us if they can, or they can go sing at a different church. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. But the bottom line is we are going to be bringing new voices to that choir. and I hope that everyone will, long term see, as we see, that that's only going to enhance what we do.
Yeah, and funny enough, reading that article, the thing about Jedi this morning, I was reading it on the site, and it says that this came out of or it doesn't actually say it came out of, but it did say that in 2015 your strategic plan identified broader relevancy as one of the 5 goals. That was interesting. So you're 5 years into that, or 6 years now into that. Do you think you're making sufficient progress, or is this just an ongoing thing that's part of your values? You intend to inculcate that within the ATC's DNA?
It's definitely an ongoing thing. I think that no one's ever going to be done with this, as I said. I do think that you're right. We've been at this for a while. I think that there's a new momentum behind the work that we're doing, some of which because we've laid some great groundwork through that initial phase. This is a huge learning curve for all of us. I mean, to truly understand white privilege, not just intellectually, but emotionally, to be able to, and what that brings, and how you interpret things that you see that in the past you might have interpreted differently.
Sure,
that's a key point to really start to figure out how can we as a board, with our leadership, the board, and at the staff level, understanding that at some point, some of us need to step aside and make room for new people and new voices and new faces to come into the organization. And so there is a sense of loss, or we in fact are, but I like to see it more as understanding that it's important for us to pass that torch on to this next generation that does, I think, just bring this greater diversity. So all of those things are in play here, and it's going to take a while. But again, we're firmly, our feet are firmly committed to this path.
And I see you have a few initiatives that are underway, and you're undertaking in this field. I remember when I spoke, I think 2 presidents before you, Ron Tipton, about this. He said the next gen summits, I think it was, or the next gen advisory council is a far more council, and it clearly is. You can see on that list of people. Are there other initiatives people should know about that you're taking?
Well, I think one thing that I'm excited about is we just for the first time have created a new position that we're calling a talent acquisition director, and so it's somebody we're going to centralize our recruiting function for staff, but that person also, part of their job description is in fact to build new partnerships and new links to new resource areas for us to draw staff from. So we're talking about how can we become broader in that initial net in advertising these opportunities to people that, in some ways we don't show up on their job boards consistently now. So by the same token, the board is absolutely continuing to look at how through our board reelection cycles and bringing on new board members, how we can build in the broad brush of diversity, both in skill and in personal diversity, and representation. Yeah. So there's programs that Julie will continue doing, educational programs, bringing youth to the trail. All of that is really important. But at the end of the day, for us to change the systemic bias that exists within ATC, it has to be by changing the staff and the board. We have to change who we are as leaders so that the representation of this organization is representative of the people that we're trying to get into the space.
Well, I'm these days the most hated demographic of all, of course, the old fat white guy. so they hate us.
Well, but you see, I think that kind of comment doesn't help the narrative, right? Because there's nothing about somehow people seem to think inclusion can only be arrived at through exclusion, and there's nothing to say you can't simply build a bigger table, right? You don't. Sure, I said to them, we're not playing a game of chairs where when the music stops, it's whoever's there that can grab the remaining chairs. We're making sure there's chairs for everybody. if that picture helps you feel a little bit better.
A bigger tent that includes us. That's cool.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's funny. Well, look, I appreciate you telling us about it. It was something that, you're right. I mean, emotionally for me, it is, I know my behavior in the last 20 years ago was something I would not be happy with nowadays. Back in the UK, we were casually careless with our language sometimes, and with no thought of malice behind it. It just was a casual carelessness, and I'm aware that's something that is changing in our everyday lives.
Well, and if you don't mind, I'm going to take this as a kind of teachable moment here, but I have to tell you, the interview that you mentioned before we came on air about and talking with Andrew Downs, there was a moment during that interview where you felt you needed to describe how Andrew looked. You talked about him, this white, well, you didn't say white guy, but this guy with a beard, as though somehow how he looked created his authority to speak on this topic, or that he therefore was more credible because he, quote unquote, looked like a hiker. But that language means, well, what if I don't look like that? Does that mean I don't get to be considered a hiker? And those are the kinds of things that I'm really trying for our current supporters and constituents. Those are the things. And it's not like your intent meant that.
No, certainly not.
But you do need to, again, that's how it could be interpreted, because even I felt it. I'm like, well, I guess then, he couldn't describe me as some gnarly girl with a beard. She definitely looks like a hiker. So therefore, what's she talking about this stuff for? So I really do think, again, I don't want to send you out, but you sort of you kind of brought it up saying about that. That was just something that was fresh in my mind. And I think it's just a really good opportunity for people to kind of sit back for a minute and think about it, because we have pictures in our head. Well, this is what this looks like, and I think a lot of the work of Jedi is challenging those perceptions.
You know what? I totally take that on board. You're actually not the first person to comment on that as well.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. But once again, as you didn't just now, nobody thought my intent was anyway bad. I was just trying to put something across that perhaps I should have put it across slightly differently. But and I'm aware that was something that I should watch out for. My problem is being a Brit, and I know I'm talking on recording right now, but my problem is I often think of something which strikes me as quite funny at the time. I say it, and then someone says, "Didn't you think what you were going to say before you said it?" Not really, no.
But that's the cultural differences too, right?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, look, thanks for coming to explain to us, Sandy. I do appreciate it, and hopefully we'll speak again soon sometime.
All right, great. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, cheers. Bye. Well, that told me. I must confess that I was originally a bit taken aback by her teachable moment, but she was kind of right. I don't like the idea of having to consider everything I say before I say it, but she certainly had a point. We may not always agree with everything that the AT do and say, but in Sandy, they certainly have a formidable leader. And funnily enough, after the interview I did with Andrew Downs a couple of weeks ago about the Mountain Valley Pipeline, one of the pipeline protesters, a bloke named Maury Johnson, posted on Facebook about his disappointment with my interview of Andrew. Naturally, I got hold of him and invited him on the show. He's been sending me what he regards as evidence, and he'll be here next week to present his case. Remember, any of you can always leave me your opinion by writing to me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com, and many of you do, or leaving me a voicemail on the website. Just click on one of the microphones and you're able to vent at me for 2 minutes. Now, let's get back on with Katie and hear how her preparations are going. I'm back on with Katie. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hi, Steve. Fine, thank you.
Good. You're getting ready to go, obviously. You've got all your stuff, all your gear, and you sent me your gear list. And the first thing I noticed straight away was you have exactly the same backpack that I had, and you've got exactly the same tent as me as well. So that's you. Did you, by the way? So tell everybody what your main three are. Then your backpack, your sleeping bag, rather, and your tent.
Sure. Okay. So my backpack is a Z-Pax Arc Blast, and I had tried out another pack that was more substantial, but also was carrying more weight.
Right.
So
is that new for this year?
This is new.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you go, by the way, funny enough, and I've said this on the podcast before, which surprised me. I'm a big guy. I'm a heavy guy, actually, but I'm a pretty big guy. And I'm quite tall. I'm about 6'2". And when I went to Z-Packs, I went to their office in Melbourne, Florida. And and I, as a matter of, I just assumed I'd be having a large pack or even an extra large. Turns out I needed a medium frame pack. So it's quite interesting. It's a medium pack. So it's quite interesting to me how different it can be. Does it feel comfortable with you when it's loaded?
So mine is a small, and they do tell you right up front that don't expect to carry more than 25 pounds in the pack.
Right.
It's quite a streamlined pack. So, you know, I've tried to keep my gear with food and water under that. So don't really want to see what that 25 pounds would be. So
yeah, you can't get a lot of stuff in it, to be honest with you. But what it does do, they sell additionally these hip pockets you can attach to both to the belt, which is useful. Have you got those?
I do have one. I have it's like this little hip pack or fanny pack that you wear in the front, and you can either like carry it like a shoulder bag if you're in town, or you can take that strap off and then just slip the belt through it, and it attaches to the belt. Nice. Yeah, so I like that.
I tell you, mine were great. I loved my backpack, and my first one when I went in 2014 was £5 2 ounces. This one's like 18 or about 19 or 20 ounces, something like that, isn't it? Amazing. Yeah, very nice. And so for my sleep system, I have a Enlightened Equipment Revelation quilt, and I had never used a quilt before. Right. So I tried it out last summer and in the fall, and I like it. I like, I like the versatility of it. I do as well. I had a quilt as well.
And it shaves off a little weight. I went ahead and purchased two, one because I'm starting, early March. I wanted to have a 10-degree bag. Right, yeah. Which is like toasty warm. I've used it.
Take my word for this.
Down to
when it gets really cold, when it gets cold, the smokers say toasty is very, very welcome indeed. Take my word for that.
That's right. And I'm using the Neo Air Extra Light. I'd seen some really good reviews, online, and thought, well, for me, sleeping is important, and so really important. So,
totally.
And I'm one of those people. I really do. I'm like on a spit all night. I turn and turn and turn and turn. So so the Neo Air Extra Light, about 12 ounces.
Yeah, I had one of those. I had the large size one of those, and that was. If I'm looking at the first five things you've got, I had all of those things, including the Cedar Summit silk travel liner as well. That's so lovely. That is. You're going to really enjoy that. You don't seem to have a pillow.
No, I don't need a pillow. I'll use my clothes bag. We'll see. I may, but to me, with backpacking and camping, I've been able to use my clothes bag as a pillow, and it works fine. Cool. And if I can save a little weight, that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, all right. So the tent, what was behind the choice of your tent?
Weight.
Right, it's all about the weight. You're right.
It's the Z-Pack Duplex, and it's 1 pound, 3 ounces, and the ease of setting it up is unbelievable. It's like you stake out your 4 corners, you put your trekking poles in, and you're done. Yeah. You do a little bit of adjustments, and I've had the chance this fall to play with adjustments. I was out for 4 days, and one of the days was a driving rain for 24 hours, and I loved it. You can adjust it down so that it doesn't splash up in.
That's right.
and just cozy and wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great. I'm surprised they don't bloody sponsor this show. I always say how great their Z-packs are as well. Yeah. So did you get the? I can't remember what they call them now. Those extra poles which you effectively make it just a pop up, and you don't need to stake it at all. Don't need your trekking poles at all. And they're great, especially in the north when there are no proper camp. When there's tent platforms.
Right. And I almost did that, but interesting. And of course, I can't remember the name of the couple who were going, but I watched one of their YouTubes, and they had the same tent, and I watched how they set it up on the platform, and you can do it. There's a way to set it up without that. There is. You're right. You're right. But so again, it to me it seemed like extra weight, and I'm not willing to carry it.
Good for you. That's great. That's great. So I'm looking at the other things you got there. You got a Z-Pack spare bag, which I haven't seen that. And is that just a dry bag? What dry sack? What is that?
It is. It's a dry sack and lightweight. And I just did it for convenience. Got that one for convenience because I was already getting stuff, so I didn't really want to go into too much more searching. To me,
I think it's good stuff. And you'll find it's almost ubiquitous out on the trail. The Z-Packs, especially the Duplex. And the trekking poles, I also had Lecky, funnily enough. Second time anyway.
These I'm sure I've had these almost 20 years.
Wow.
And I can't break them.
There you go. Don't try now.
I might this time, but
don't try now.
They have been so great.
And the jet ball, you got the jet ball flash as your stove, which is such a reliable, fast boiling machine, isn't it?
It really is. And it always amazes me. And it's under 3 ounces. So again, weight is really important for me.
Yeah.
So.
Now I'm looking. You've got the smart water bottles. You got the soy squeeze. You got pretty much everything I had actually. You got the 2-liter water bladder as well. Is that important to you to carry so much water?
I won't be carrying so much water, but I did want the wide mouth container to get the water. No, I don't foresee that. Maybe later in the summer that I'll need to carry more water, but not on the East Coast. I wouldn't.
There's a couple of places. It's really not that bad generally, though. Now I'm looking at I'm looking at your clothes. I'm trying to. There you go. Now you've got the. I've got this spreadsheet open here. You got a puffy, a Patagonia micro puff insulated jacket. Is that one you bought specially for this?
I did. Yeah, I had the Nano Puff for like the last couple of years, and I wanted something with a hood, so I decided to get the Micro Puff with the hood. And I know it's a little more weight, but my thought is if I need to be warm, I will need something that can do the job.
Absolutely necessary as well. Yeah. Just try and look further down. You got Vionic flip flops. I had the zero. I can't remember what they were. These really very light sort of flip flops. I can't remember what they were. They were great as well, though.
Yeah. The flip flops. I've had these for over a year or so, and I wear them almost every day. And the thing is they have great arch support. They're not designed to be camp shoes, but all the camp shoes I found after you've hiked, many miles and you go to your feet are like wiped out. I need something that gives me that arch support at the end of the day that just lets my feet say, yes.
Now, I notice on your list, you don't have all the weight of everything. So you're not, that's not completed yet then, is it?
Well, other than loading it in my pack. So I have put everything in my pack and weighed my pack without food and water, and it's coming in at around 17 pounds.
Wow. Wow. That's pretty darn good. It really is. And unfortunately, my Google Docs has packed up on me for some reason, so I can't see everything on here.
That's okay.
So what have you got for waterproof stuff?
So I'm bringing. I was able to get like the Black Diamond raincoat and pants, and again, I went with them because they're lightweight. You know, I especially like them for like if it's rainy and windy. You know, I think of rain gear as wind gear as well. So
yes,
you know, kind of taking the cold, blocking some of the cold out.
Everyone knows who listens to the show. I've never found rain gear that actually works. Well, you know, it works for about 20 minutes, and then you've had it. You're going to be soaked. Right.
That's right. And then because I'm starting early March, I have debated back and forth about how much base layer to bring, but I think what I'm going to do is bring, you know, the Smart Wool. I have a Smart Wool top and bottom.
Yes, so.
And, you know, kind of I guess the weight's 250. And then I have a Patagonia R1 for my mid layer. It's a hoodie that definitely also blocks the wind.
Yeah, and it you know, I don't think people realize quite how much different it is at elevation, and how piercing the wind can be when you're up a mountain. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
it can be pretty
when
nasty.
The wind cuts through you, man. If you can stop the wind, that warms you up pretty well.
That's right. Yeah. So, are you is all the stuff that you're taking? Is this for your winter? Is this a winter gear, or is this for you're going to send stuff back and get different stuff sent to you later in the year?
Yes, I will definitely be sending back I have a different sleeping quilt. So I have a 40-degree quilt that I will probably around Damascus, you know, Southern Virginia, switch that out. Sure. And then as well as I'll send home my base layer.
Right. So you've got, and I'm looking at a bit further down the list now, and you're going to take the pages for each section of the guidebook. Are you not going to use something on your phone like
I'm going to use both.
All right. Okay.
I do have, I've got gut hooks, and I am going to use that, but you know, I think it helps for me, for my peace of mind, to have something there. You know,
yeah, and you know what? That's important.
Look at.
Yeah, that's important that you're comfortable with what you've got in terms of your guiding stuff. Although I said, what's great about gut hooks, if you go off trail, you can see yourself off trail on gut hooks, so you can literally see I'm going the wrong way, and I can turn around now and I'll be all right. So that's reassuring, I tell you.
I seem to be off the cliff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that one.
Something I don't see it on my list, but I did get a Garmin, and a Garmin InReach Mini.
Right. Okay.
I want to be able to communicate with my three daughters when I'm out there, and even if I've lost cellular service, I can use satellite and just let them know where I am.
And you're also taking a small journal. You're actually going to write on the trail. I can almost guarantee you won't, because it's exhausting every night to do that.
Probably not. Yeah. But, you know, it's a very small journal. It's like 3 inches by 4 inches. And my idea is just to put some questions in for myself. I'm really trying to have myself notice what's going on in my hike, you know.
That's cool. That's really cool. And
we'll see.
And you've given yourself no real luxuries at all. This is you've really pared it down, which is fine. You know, you're not going to need them. You know, you'll find, you know, you won't need some of the stuff you're taking, to be honest with you. But I think it looks a great little list of stuff, and that's going to get you down to what weight do you say it was?
Well, with my winter gear in, and just base weight is 17 right now. Okay. And I'm hoping, having removed one of my base layers, which I'm going to actually literally check the weather forecast to decide whether I'll bring that second top. You know. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, that's an update of where you are in terms of your gear. Have you got anything new, anything still to buy, or are you pretty much done now?
I think I'm it. I think I've got it.
Cool. Yeah, don't second guess yourself. Don't second guess yourself. Yeah. It's okay if
Sure.
You can always find other things to take.
I still need to buy, a can of fuel. I still need to. I'm going to get some hand warmers. When I get toward Fontana Dam, I'll check the weather in the Smokies and decide whether to get micro spikes.
Right.
When I get around Nantahala.
Yes. Yes, that's useful. But I tell you, you said you're going to get some fuel for the jet ball. I presume you're flying there. Where are you coming from?
I'm taking the train.
Oh right, okay. So that's okay.
Taking the train.
Because you can't take gas. You can't take a jet ball gas on the plane. Yeah, they don't like that sort of thing.
Yeah, I asked an online forum about carrying my trekking poles on the train, and evidently there's no issue with that.
You should be okay.
I'll just collapse them and attach them to my bag.
That'd be fine. Well, look, that's great. I really like the list. And I think next week will be our last conversation we had before you actually get on the trail, which is going to be interesting. And and I think what we'll do with that, we'll talk about other preparations that you need to make before you go, and then we'll be ready to speak to you the week after. When you're actually on the trail.
Excellent.
Okay. All right.
Excellent.
All right, Katie. Well, I'll speak to you soon. Don't, as I say, don't second guess yourself. You've got a lot of good stuff there. All right.
Excellent. All right, Steve. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
She certainly sounds full of confidence in her gear, doesn't she? Though I can almost guarantee you that she's going to be second guessing herself just before she gets on the trail. But that wasn't it. Remember last week when I told her that I'd start the interview this week with a question? Well, as you could tell, I totally forgot. But we got back on, and here's the answer. Now, when I'd finished recording that with Katie, I remembered I was going to ask her something else, wasn't I? So let's talk about the question, or the thing you wrote when you wrote your notes to me. It is, I have learned how to take care of my suffering and anger. Not always very gracefully, I am the first to admit. What did that mean?
Well, let me just give it to you like this, Steve. There is a Buddhist metaphor about the second arrow, and the second arrow. If someone's shot with an arrow, they're in a great deal of pain, right? Sure. So if that second arrow comes, that's even more pain and suffering.
Right.
So the first arrow
trying to work out where this is going, by the
way. Right. The first arrow is the actual thing that happens.
Right.
The rain that happens on the Appalachian Trail and up the Appalachian Mountains. Those pointless ups and downs, the sameness. It's uncomfortable, strenuous, all of that.
Yeah.
But the second arrow is when you think that it's going to be anything other than that. If you emphasize or dramatize or make a big deal out of the irritation of the rain, if you think that hiking up the Appalachian Trail is not going to be ups and downs, that's your second arrow. So for me, and when I say I not always gracefully, it's when I stop being mindful, when I let myself get sucked down this rabbit hole, where I'm thinking, oh man, I'm not getting my goals accomplished today.
Yeah,
Then I get mad, I get angry, and
But you've now learned how to control that. Have you? You've learned that you can control that, can you? That's interesting.
Sure, you learn to control it by paying attention to it.
I've got to tell you, the Appalachian Trail will give you plenty of opportunity to pay attention to it. Oh, dear, that's funny. That is funny. Well, I wanted to make sure I asked you that. And funnily enough, I almost wish I hadn't given you the week to prepare it, because that's such a darn good answer. All right, Katie. All right. Well, thanks for answering that anyway. And we'll speak again next week. All right?
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers. Then.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice answer, eh? Very zen. Thanks as always goes to our wonderful donors. This week, our lovely monthly donors, Michelle Brown, Suzanne Johnson and Vicky Thomason, have stayed with us. So thank you so much, ladies. Also, we've had very generous sums from Ronelle Baker and Philip Hall. Thanks so much. It really means a lot to me. Finally, Larry Luxemburg's Walking the Appalachian Trail discusses women and couples on the trail. I think if you wrote a similar book today, you might have a section on couples, but as you've heard from the strong women on the show today, they don't need to be singled out as a separate category. All these women are, and want to be, hikers. I'll see you next week. The thing with two heads. Women and couples on the trail. Though new as an endless footpath through the wilderness, the trail itself seems age-old, so naturally does it fit into its surroundings. Just a path, now through old clearings, sweet-scented with grasses in the sun, through dim forests, then up through scrub and out over bare mountain ledges. It seems it's been since the beginning. It seems it will be till the end. Gene Stevenson, founding editor of the Appalachian Trailway News, Impressions of the Maine Wilderness, 1941. From the early days of the AT, women have hiked the trail, constructed and maintained sections and helped hold hiking groups together. But among long-distance hikers, women were rare until the 70s. And not until the 80s did women account for as much as a fifth of the through hikers. Before 1970, only 3 women had through hiked the AT, and only 2 had done the trail alone. By 1993, more than 300 women had through hiked the trail, but only 1 did it while pregnant. Donna Satterlee's 1977 through hike turned out a little different than she'd planned. A month into a hike, she stopped at a clinic in Hot Springs where her suspicions were confirmed. She was pregnant. At first, she thought she'd have to leave the trail, but the nurse practitioner who examined her said, "It's fine if you want to keep hiking, just listen to how you feel." She found that by pacing herself, she could continue. After the ups and downs of North Georgia, the Stokoas and the Smokies, she was in good shape. "If I'd known I was pregnant, I probably wouldn't have started the trail, though I don't know for sure," Donna said. "If we hadn't done the trail then, we probably couldn't have done it until we retired." Donna and her husband Richard occasionally left the trail and went home, and there she received her prenatal care. She read pregnancy books. "I felt pretty comfortable about it," she said. "In some ways it was better than being at home. I got lots of fresh air and exercise." They finished in late September, 6 months after starting at Springer. 6 weeks later, Georgia Maine Satterlee was born. If it had been a boy, we'd have called him Anthony Thomas. The initials would be AT. A high school student now, Georgia likes her name. She's the only Georgia in her school, and people enjoy the story of how she acquired her name. And yes, Georgia likes to hike. "All along I felt I was slow compared to other through hikers," Donna said. "But in the White Mountains we came across day hikers, and I was hiking faster than they were. We made adjustments as we needed to," she said. "Balancing the pack was difficult with my stomach sticking out, so we sent my frame pack home and I used my day pack." Donna tried hard on the hike to take good care of herself. "I didn't want to do anything that would harm the baby. If we needed to go slower, we did. My husband was always supportive. We'd rest a couple of hours at midday. My favourite places were the White Mountains and Maine. We passed through the huts at the end of the season, and they were short-handed and let us wash dishes and stay there. Near Mount Washington, we'd pass hut boys with the heavy frame packs, and they'd see me and say, 'You're the pregnant hiker.' Most people were friendly like that. Father Charles, who was just opening the Perrysburg hostel, said we were Mary and Joseph. One lady did write a letter saying, 'How could you do that?' But most people were supportive. We made a lot of friends. That's an important part of the trip. It was nice for us as a couple to be together. You have your ups and downs, but it makes you stronger. The memories of the trip are still vivid and basically good. The days that were miserable I remember less than the good days. The trail makes you aware of all the things you can do without. It helps you keep things in perspective. As a couple, we understand each other a little better. We've always gotten on well. After the trail, I knew him that much more. We always helped each other. If he'd chosen to go on ahead, I would have understood, but he chose to go slower and stay with me. From the earliest days of the AT movement, women have been involved with the trail in many capacities, but only a small percentage of trail activists have been women. In the last decade, that has changed. 2 of the last 3 ATC chairs have been women. In 1925, a woman, Harley Ann James, issued the call for the meeting that created the ATC. She remained active for decades, becoming one of the ATC's first 4 honorary members, along with another woman, Marion Park, who had been a key member of PATC. Jean Stevenson, who had a PhD in judicial science, was founding editor of the AT News in 1939, edited guidebooks, did trail construction and maintenance, and generally helped keep the ATC together for 40 years. Ruth Blackburn, Anna Michener, Florence Nichols, Elizabeth Levers, and many others made important contributions to the ATC and its constituent clubs. Since completing the ATC in 1978-79, Cindy Ross may well have succeeded Grandma Gatewood as the most renowned female 2,000-miler. Cindy has written books on the AT and the Pacific Crest Trail, and she has written for Backpacker magazine. She also served as older coordinator. Cindy married another 2,000-miler, Todd the Tramper Glatfelter. Together they have continued backpacking with their 2 children and set up a hikers hostel in Pennsylvania. Jan Sakajawea Collins has suggested several possible reasons why fewer women than men hike the AT. For one, the trail is more dangerous for women. For another, women are generally smaller than men, yet still have to carry much of the same gear. This means they are carrying a higher percentage of their body weight. Jan believes that women are brought up to quit activities when they're painful and are thus more likely to drop out in the first few weeks of a through hike before one is in top condition. Perhaps the Boy Scouts do a better job of preparing boys for backpacking the AT than do the Girl Scouts. Many male hikers get their start in the armed services and fewer women serve in the military. Finally, women are probably less likely to start the trail without a partner, and partners are hard to find. Over the years, many couples have married or honeymooned on the trail. Since through hiking is such an intense experience, it's natural that so many romances have blossomed on the trail. Mike Jones and his wife, Helen Smiles in Our Hearts, who had met on the trail 2 years before, paused on one of their through hikes to get married in the parking lot of the Country Diner in Bastion, Virginia. At least 2 couples have been married at trail days in Damascus. Others are married everywhere from Springer to Katahdin. It would seem that any couple able to endure the stress of a through hike would have a rock-solid relationship. Alas, such does not seem to be the case. The evidence suggests that AT marriages are no more durable than others in our society. According to Rowley Muse's survey, half the couples who complete the trail together split up fairly soon. Because many single hikers have trouble adjusting to life after the trail, it's probably at least as difficult for couples. Leonard, habitual hiker Atkins, who has been hiking with his wife Laurie, the Umbrella Lady, since 1982, said, "As a couple, we find it harder not to be on the trail. Other people say they're glad they have a job so they have time apart. We find that on the trail, the more we're together, the better it is. In most couples, one partner will be a half-mile ahead. We pretty much walk one right behind the other." While it can be more difficult hiking as a couple, there are rewards. Dan Nellis finds that though he slows down when he hikes with his wife, Kathy Backpacker, he enjoys having someone to share the experiences with. Sharing chores, talking about fun things, exclaiming over the brightness of the stars, it's liberating and exciting to share that, he said. It makes the good times so much better and bad times easier, said Ginny Spirit Walker Frost, who hiked the trail once alone and once with a partner. Others find that it's helpful to have someone with whom to share equipment and chores. Some hikers, of course, have the problem of a non-hiking spouse. This requires sensitivity on both sides. Although not always the case, it's usually a wife or girlfriend who's back home. Frank Redblaze Shea had made plans to hike the AT a year and a half in advance. "I really wanted Katahdin more than anything in the world," he said. Then, a few months before the trip, he met Stephanie Page, a non-hiker from Ohio who had never seen a mountain. Both realized it would be impractical for her to go along. Stephanie met Frank a few times along the way and eventually began to understand what the through hike meant to him. "I wrote him a lot of letters, and I know that was really important to him," Stephanie said. "So even though I only talked to him once every 2 weeks, I felt very much a part of what he was doing. I had a map on my wall of where he was. It was a connection." Although she was lonely, she liked the changes she saw in Frank as the hike went on. He was calmer, more mature, less perturbed by petty problems. Now, she wants to do the trail. Ray Hunt and Collins Chew, formerly the ATC chair and vice chair, hiked much of the trail together over 15 years. When they did day hikes, their wives, Martha and Charlotte, would shuttle them to the trailhead, then shop or explore the area until it was time to pick them up. It worked well for all of them. Many women do hike the trail alone, but most stress that they take special precautions. Kay Wood, who hiked alone at 70, and Susan Gale Airy were two who chose not to hitchhike alone. Other women avoid road crossings when they are alone. Jen Collins and others recognise that the chances of encountering danger on the trail, though slight, are real, but they want to live their lives and they are willing to take calculated risks. They do what they can to diminish the danger, then go for it. Most say that if they get bad vibes about someone, they move on. They avoid shelters near road crossings and don't broadcast their itineraries. Only a few times was I mindful of danger, said Connor Carolina Cooker's coward. I just thought, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and there's not a lot I can do. I'm not going to hide my whole life. A few miles north of Damascus, Jan came across a naked man in the woods. When I saw him, I thought he must be sunning himself. I cleared my throat, but he didn't move. My partners had gone ahead. I thought, I'm not going to go by this guy. I backed up toward a dirt road. I walked down the road and there he was in the bushes, putting his clothes on. Quietly I turned around. He saw me and ducked down. I could tell he was hiding. I freaked. I thought, I'm dead. I had to make a decision whether to throw my pack down and run for my life or just run with my pack on. I just couldn't drop my pack. I started running down the trail in the opposite direction. I heard a noise. I thought it was him in the woods. I'd heard a deer running. I thought, what next? As I came out by a little town, I saw a family fishing. The woman said, "How are you?" I said, "Not too good." I started crying. She gave me a hug and they took me into the village. I got such support from my partners. The Forest Service were good about trying to track the man down. They finally caught him the next year. After that, I changed my hiking style. I had to hike with people. Now I hike by myself all the time, but I act like I'm with others. Profile: Mary Ann Miller. 4 of us sat on the curb watching the hikers' parade at trail days in Damascus. With Mary Ann were her husband Ken and 2-year-old son Benjamin. Often the effects of a through hike are difficult to pinpoint, but here were a few tangible ones. Mary Ann, who lived in Warren Doyle's hometown of Shelton, Connecticut, started Warren's 1990 expedition alone. Ken was one of the 2 van drivers who supported the group. I thought that hiking the AT was the most wonderful experience of my entire life, Mary Ann said. I was free for the first time. All of a sudden I realised that I could do anything with my life. Mary Ann joined one of Warren Doyle's group through hikes after seeing his slideshow. For years before her through hike, Mary Ann had big family responsibilities. Her parents and 2 brothers had died young, and she had raised 1 brother and another brother's children. I'd always been the person everyone came to for help, she said. I decided they were going to have to learn to get along without me for 4 months. I'd never gone away, never done anything like this before. I found the first week that the mantle of responsibility that fell off my shoulders had weighed a ton. She added, I had left instructions. There were to be no marriages, no births, no deaths while I was gone, and that was the way it was. Doyle's groups walk with day packs, keep to a strict schedule that permits few rest days, and hike an average of about 50% more miles each day than do other through hikers. The rigidity and extended togetherness are the opposite of what most through hikers prize. Many also worry about the impact of 15 or 20 people on a backcountry trail that fewer than 200 people a year complete. By other measures, however, long-distance hikers account for only a small percentage of the trail's use, and scout, church and camp groups often use the trail for a weekend or longer. For Mary Ann, though, the expedition was a great way to do the trail. An inexperienced backpacker, she enjoyed the support of other group members and the freedom from having to carry much weight. All the backpackers that we met were struggling, Mary Ann said. That's part of their experience, I'm sure. It means a lot to them, but our type wasn't a struggle. It was a picnic. It was like 4 months of absolute vacation. The expedition members were able to hike with only day packs because a van, carrying the rest of their gear, met them nearly every night. Because of space limitations in the van, hikers had to keep their possessions in 2 milk crates. Some hikers disdained adhering to a schedule, but Mary Ann found it liberating. It freed you, she said, because you didn't have to think about anything. You were going to go from point A to point B, whether it was 15 miles or 27 miles. That was what you did that day, so what else did you have to worry about? Nothing. And you knew you could walk that far. On the way, whatever you wanted to do, you could do. If you wanted to take a long time, stop at a store, nap somewhere for an hour or two, that was your prerogative. You had the freedom to do anything within the schedule. The schedule made it so easy to be free. Doyle has his hikers hold hands in a circle at the start, finish and key places in between. He considers it a powerful motivating force and a symbol of their determination to have the entire group finish. Only one circle, the 1978 expedition, was broken, and that remains a bitter memory for him. Members disagree on the circle's power, but people who see slideshows or videos of the trips retain the circles as a vivid image of the expeditions. Hikers choose whether to join the circle and commit to staying together until the end. Marianne didn't join at first. Arguing with Warren at one pre-hike meeting, she said, "You're not being realistic." "This is not reality," he answered. There was dead silence in the whole room, Marianne said. All the group members were there, and we just let that settle into everybody. 4 members didn't join the initial circle on Springer Mountain. Then we hiked for a week, and I joined the circle because he was right. It wasn't reality. Reality is waking up in the morning, making yourself breakfast, making the beds, maybe having to go to work during the day and living a life. Reality is not rolling out of your tent in the morning and having a deer walking by, and you can about reach out and touch it, or walking through fields of flowers waving in the breeze, or smelling a pine when you're walking through a pine forest and being free of any responsibility. For more than a year before the trip, Warren had the group take long practice hikes and attend meetings. He made the hikes difficult and warned repeatedly that the trip would be hard. Marianne recalls her first long practice hike with the pride of a survivor. She got up at 3 a.m. to make the long drive to Virginia. During the day, they discussed the trip. Not until 11 at night did they start the 2-hour drive to the trailhead. At 1 a.m, she was walking through the woods looking for a spot to camp. They were up at 6, hiking again. "I remember thinking that I was going to die for sure," Marianne said. There was no way to live through this experience, but the others helped pull her through. At the Bear's Den Hostel in Virginia, one of the women in the group helped Marianne into the shower. By that point, she was so exhausted she could barely stand. "As tired and sore as I was, I never was discouraged about doing it," she said. Instead, she'd get angry at Warren. He'd make you so mad that you'd stomp off 20 miles in no time at all, and the whole time you'd be thinking, "I'm going to kill him." It fired you to go. He's amazing. People who attend Warren's week-long backpacking seminar or who go with the expedition say he effectively prepares them for the trail. Although some of the preparations may be unpleasant, those who come under his tutelage are much more likely to complete the trail than other hikers. Even for an experienced hiker, Warren's techniques can boost confidence. Albie Pokrob, who thru-hiked in 1978, joined Warren's 1980 expedition. Albie couldn't conceive of hiking 50 miles in a day, but doing it removed his previous idea of limits, and he felt inspired to tackle other obstacles. "You thought, I could do that. Maybe I can do this," Albie said. At the beginning of the trip at Springer Mountain, Marianne was nervous and excited. The longest she'd hiked was 3 days. She knew she could do that, but she wasn't sure if she could go farther. "After the 5th day, I knew I could do it with no problem," she said. During the preparations for the trip, Marianne and the van driver, Ken, became acquainted and a romance blossomed. On the last practice hike in April 1990, Marianne arrived late at night at Hemlock Overlook Center. She saw Ken, asked him a few questions, and they settled into a long conversation. "Now we're both getting wet standing in the rain," said Marianne, and I said, "I've got to get some shut-eye." We were getting up at 4 or 5 to hike, and it was real late. He says to me, "By the way, what's your name?" He was Mr. Romantic, Marianne said, as Ken protested. He would take me at night up into the woods, and there would be this huge rock in the middle of a stream someplace, and he'd sing and we'd dance. He brought me flowers, just really romantic stuff, the whole time we were out there. Laughing, Ken said, "I don't remember any of this." At the end of April, Marianne flew to Atlanta to start the thru-hike. Since Ken lived nearby, he met her at the airport. She thought they'd go straight to Springer. Instead, they went to Ken's house for a Sunday family dinner. Ken's father drove them to Springer, grilling her the whole way. At the beginning of the hike, Marianne became annoyed with Ken. She had grown friendly with another woman and was doing things with her. "He just seemed to be everywhere I was," Marianne said. "I thought, can't he ever leave me alone?" But it was always stuff like, "Come on, walk down here. There's a beautiful waterfall. Let's go up here in the woods and watch the sunset." My mother taught me to always be polite. I was polite, But all the time I was saying to myself, what is the matter with this guy? She was always after me, Ken said. It took a while, but he kind of grew on me, Marianne said. At the end of the hike, he came back to Connecticut for a while with me. Then I got a ticket to Georgia in the mail for Thanksgiving and met his family, and that's when he proposed. I packed up, and that was that. Marianne and Ken were a source of humour to the other expedition members because of the creative places Ken found to pitch their tent. It got to be a joke where our tent was going to be, Marianne said. Late one night in North Carolina, they decided that big roots made their campsite uncomfortable. So they picked up the tent with their sleeping bags and other gear inside. They walked 3/4 of a mile down a mountain in the dark and pitched a tent beneath the giant wasilic poplar at Rock Gap, North Carolina. It was scary for me because he knew where he was going and I didn't, but I just had to trust him, Marianne said. I knew we were going over water. I didn't know how deep it was or where to step. He would say, put your right foot about 3 inches over and then jump. I couldn't see anything, but we got there. Her homecoming in Connecticut made Marianne more appreciative of a trail experience. Her 34-year-old brother, who'd had several previous strokes, died a month after she finished the trail. It brought home to her that life is short, and for some people, it's shorter than others. If it's going to be short for me, I want to make sure I do what I want to do before it's all over. After the trip, it was difficult for Marianne to relate to her co-workers. When I came back, I had travelled much more than 2,167 miles. I had travelled mentally much farther than that, and everybody else hadn't. And so it was hard to talk to people sometimes. She was sad and surprised by people who were so concerned about things that seemed petty to her. It was disconcerting to realise that she had been like that, and she hoped she would not be that way again. During our conversation, little Benjamin had fallen asleep. Now well rested, he and his father would join Marianne on yet another springtime journey to Georgia, now home.